Hello everyone. Today I want to give you an overview of my studio as well as how I use it to make music. You can find some examples of the music I work on in the description below, and I'll try to put some links on the screen as well. And right now the background music is something that I made as well, but it was quite some time ago. Just a quick note that I'm using this setup to produce electronic music as opposed to performing it. First up, I'm going to talk about the two Elektron boxes that I have, the Octatrack and the Analog 4. They carry out the brunt of the sequencing and composition duties in the music that I make. They are really the backbone of many of the recent tracks that I've worked on. Currently, the Octatrack sets the clock for the composition, the tempo that is. It also sequences the Roland JV880 module, and its main duty is as a sample drum machine. That's how I currently use it. Since it's a very feature-rich machine, kind of encompassing features that would otherwise be on separate musical instruments, I find that it's better to focus on one aspect of it at a time before moving on to the next. However, I do want to get some more cables in order to get back into sampling, so that I'm not just limited to internal resampling. So to recap, the Octatrack is on drum and MIDI sequencing duties. The second Elektron machine that I have is the Analog 4, which in comparison to the Octatrack, I have found to be much more accessible in the past, although to be fair, that is an apples and oranges comparison. The Analog 4 is a flexible 4-voice synth, analog synth groove box essentially, and I use it for basses and melodies and pads, and also I use it to sequence the fifth voice, so to speak, which is the modular synthesizer, because the Analog 4 has extensive CV sequencing options. The Analog 4 gets its tempo and pattern cues from the Octatrack. So I always start off with the Octatrack, but the patterns follow along with what the Octatrack is doing. For the time being, I'm doing it for the sake of simplicity. The sequencer on the Analog 4 is extremely capable, and I have used it in the past to compose full tracks. So rest assured that I'm not discounting the excellent sequencer on the Analog 4, but I'm just choosing to have the Octatrack be the leader in this setup at the moment. Let's talk about the modular now. I picked the modules to put together a fairly traditional subtractive synth. There are two oscillators, the Z3000 you see all the way there to the left from Tip Top, and then the Titan oscillator from Earwave. Nestled between the two oscillators is a wave folder by Steady State Fate. Then there's two LFOs and four envelopes right next to each other, followed by the filter and dual low pass gates in the blue super thin module there. There are no sequencing facilities in this system because I rely on the Analog 4 for those, which sends two pitch CV signals and also two triggers, which I can multiply using a utility module. I'm going to stop there regarding the modular system because I could go on and on. If you'd like to hear more about it, leave a comment below and I'll see if I can make a more in-depth video. Paradoxically, the JV88 by Roland is the newest piece of kit in my studio. The reason why I got this fairly early Rompler is because I wanted to widen the sound palette of the hardware instruments I had in the studio. And now I can really see why Roland is renowned for some of its patches. It's very clear to me the care that has gone into crafting some of these sounds. Now, sometimes I jokingly refer to this synth as the Safe Crackers synth because there's only one knob in order to control all the parameters. So I do feel a little bit like a bank robber trying to get into the Roland sound vault, as it were. There's definitely treasure to be found there. If you'd like a more in-depth video or a demo of the JV880, again, let me know in the comments. I also have the Teenage Engineering OP1, which isn't currently integrated with the other machines. The reason being is that the OP1 is a studio, in a manner of speaking, in and of itself. It's such a great starting point for music that I tend to use it more in a standalone manner. But if I were to use it as a sound source, I would probably sequence it over USB using the computer. And then I would either record the audio internally or through a splitter cable that I have. Next up, I want to talk about what I use to record all my synths and hardware instruments into my computer and my DAW. This is the RME Fireface UFX. It was a big purchase back in 2012 when I got it. In fact, back then, Firewire was still a thing alongside USB. So this audio MIDI interface has both Firewire and USB, though I only use the USB now. I went from a small Novation interface to this, and this represents for me a huge jump in terms of audio quality, I/O, and routing flexibility. So it's definitely something that I appreciate having in the studio every day. In terms of controller keyboard, I use an Arturia KeyStep. I'm not an incredible keyboard player, so the key size and the number of octaves doesn't really bother me. I do appreciate that it has aftertouch, and I actually quite like the touch strips for the modulation and pitch bend. Now, I wonder if you've picked up on what I haven't mentioned, what's missing from my studio. Think about it for a second. The answer is studio monitors. The reason why I don't have studio monitors in this studio is that the room that I'm in is untreated. So I decided to leave my trusty Adam A5Xs on long-term loan with a friend who has a studio with acoustic treatment but needed some monitors, since I feel he'll be able to get better use out of them than me. So what do I use to monitor my tracks, I hear you ask? Well, I have a pair of Sennheiser HD25s, some reliable headphones that I've had for many years, and they're good enough for me since I'm not producing professionally. I'll also listen to my tracks on consumer Bluetooth speakers around the house to get some real-world scenarios in order to contrast what I hear in my studio cans. Alright, so we're coming to the end of the video, and I'd like to recap a little bit how I use all of this equipment together to make music. I'll start off, if you will, this is a sort of order of battle. So I'll start off, first of all, with the Octatrack to work on the rhythm and samples. Next up will be the Analog 4 that will provide the main part of the melodic elements of the track, whether that's bass or leads or pads and so on. Further melodic elements will be brought in with the JV880, which at the moment I'm using monotimbrally. That means that normally you could actually play multiple sounds on it at the same time, polyphonically. It has, I believe, 21 total polyphony that can be shared across different instruments within the one unit. But I only use it monotimbrally, meaning I use it to play one kind of instrument at a time. Once all of that is done, I will jump on the modular. The reason why is that the modular is kind of a bit particular. It's not something that I want to patch a sound and then turn it off and turn it back on, because even if I don't move any knobs or don't change any of the cables, the sound will still shift subtly. So generally I want to have most of my track done and then bring in the modular just for one straight recording session. After that, I'll record everything into the computer and edit it. And then that's when I might bring in some software synths in Ableton Live or the OP1 for some additional parts. Now, I do realize that I've covered a lot of stuff in this video. So if you have any questions, or you would like me to go into more depth about a piece of hardware or a certain aspect of my studio in a further video, please do leave a comment below, because I will read those. And whenever possible, I will try to make a follow-up video. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this far. If you did enjoy the video, then please do give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.